Good morning, evening, afternoon, night, whatever time of the day it is for you. Um, I just started watching. I found it. I found this really cool anime from TikTok, and I've been trying to find it forever, and I finally started watching it. I'm now on episode 3 out of 8, which really sucks that there's only 8 episodes. It's called World of. I believe it's pronounced Liddell. Um, and something in it really caught my attention. Um, Now, the way her her body dies in the modern world actually brought me to tears because I know someone who went through that. Um, but as she's going to play this game, something that the main character says got my attention, and I was wondering why no one had ever done this before because it's 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 really cool. Um, I don't know if actual video games do this. I haven't played enough to know. Um, I tend to be extremely picky about the video games that I play, especially computer games and anything of the sort. I tend to be extremely picky. Uh, but something, this kind of, she gets to the world and the guardian at her tower tells her that her son stopped by. And all the while I'm thinking, wait, she doesn't look older than like 16 or 18. How does she have a child? And when she stops to think about it, she's like, oh, right, the foster system. And I just got, I had to do a pause and rewatch the whole episode again because I was like, wait, hold up. Imagine playing a game that has the foster system where you can adopt children and stuff like that. And, you log out and do what you do in your daily life um, or just having to do whatever you have to do. Um, and then you come back and you realize that 200 or 300 years have gone by in the game, while for you it hasn't even been that long. Um, Now, while she was in the human world, I'm assuming she gets into a car accident or something of the sort and ends up being on life support. Um, so she hasn't had any time to play the game at all. She didn't look like she was functioning at all. Um, I'm not entirely sure of her whole situation. The only part you see is that she's got the oxygen mask on, she's on life support, and then bam, the hospital's power goes out. And then she wakes up in the game world. And in the game world, it has been 300 or 200 years. And her children are now all grown up. Um, One is a high priest, um, a professor at the academy, or a principal at the academy, something like that. And the other one is a shipbuilder who's a dwarf. The other two are elves. And she's I'm not entirely sure if she's trying to find a way back to her world. Me personally, given the stats and the OP type power that she has and that world in general, I don't think I'd ever want to go back. That's just me personally. But I had to pause it at the end of episode 3. And I went outside and I was sitting there in in the chair smoking and just talking to myself because the concept of a foster system in a game, just that alone amazes me. Um, like, how do they do that specifically? I don't know how they did it in that one. They never bring up specifics, but it had me wondering, do you raise them like normal children, or do you just kind of make sure they have food and clothes and let them do whatever and they go their own way? Um, but she said it was an NPC foster system. So I'm guessing you take in orphan NPCs and raise them or something like that, which is really cool because all of them are just the way that they care for their mother is just it's beautiful. Although her in the real world didn't look to be much older than like 16 or so. But she's like 300, 200 something years old. I'm not entirely sure of her exact age, but she's got 3 kids and doesn't look older than 18. I know that elves in that world live a very long time. Most people do elves that way, where they live longer than humans and stuff like that. But her breed, high elf, is extremely rare, supposedly. Yet she has 2 elves with her. Now I'm not entirely sure if they're high elves or if there's a different hierarchy for that, or if that's just their level. Um, she still has an assistant, uh, which is shows up as a little green bubble, and she can still pull up the screen to access her items and stuff like that. She has missed the unification of the countries there, which I believe there were 7 originally, and they broke down to 3. Well, combined to 3 instead. Uh, I'm not entirely sure of the exact story. I'm really wondering where they're going with it because there is so much potential there already. Um, so much potential. I, the concept of a foster system in a video game just sounds really awesome, and not like Sims, where you apply to get a child and you get to pick which age you prefer them to be, and then that child gets delivered to you, and then it's your kid. Um, that to me, um, The way Sims did it was just like they popped a baby out of thin air. It was just like, hey, here you go. This is yours. Um, Unlike the actual foster system, where you take in someone else's kid and foster them for a while, um, and you may have a chance to fully adopt them or not. Um, I kept imagining like playing Diablo or um, one of the other thousand games that I have. I just kept imagining, you know, doing that. Like in Diablo, you go on these quests and, uh, like, let's say in one of the missions, one of the NPCs' parents don't make it and they just leave this small child behind. You could take in that child and basically protect it and raise it. Sorry, my eyes are extremely itchy. I got contacts a while back and I'm still getting used to them. I just took them out and now it's I gotta say I never realized how blind I was until I got the contacts. And I have to keep my eyes like this to see clearly, but the lamp, which is like literally maybe want to say 10 feet away from me, I can barely see. I know it's a lamp, but the outline shape of it is a blur. I can't make out the exact details without my contacts in, but my contacts have been irritating my eyes lately. Um, I got eye drops, which my mom's husband went to go and get for me, which helped a great deal. And I even went so far as to clean them, put them back in, and still I kept getting this little blur and they kept irritating my eyes. And I was like, what the hell is going on? Um, and when I took them out, I realized there was a fucking eyelash in my contact, between my eye and my contact, and the eyelash kept moving up and down, getting in the way of my vision. Now, I'm not entirely sure if that was the issue, but when I put them in tomorrow morning, I'll see. But my mom was like, just pinch it out of your eye. That's how you're supposed to take contacts out. I was like, that doesn't work for me to put any pressure on my eyes because then I get a fucking migraine. I ain't doing that. I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. And sure enough, the easiest way for me was to slide it onto my nail and pull out. And then just plop it into its solution. It was so easy for me. And I'm not squishing it or stabbing it or anything, just sliding it on. Making sure that I've got it on there and then putting it into the solution. And the same when I'm putting it in, I put it on my pinky and I hold my eye open and I look up and just plop it in. I still have trouble putting them in because they keep sticking to my fingers no matter if they're wet or not. And sometimes I'll dip my fingers in the solution. That way it will come off my finger, but sometimes it doesn't work that way. Contacts are so difficult. Um, I'm actually thankful that my mother told me to get glasses as well so I can do both. I'm really wondering how it's going to be with the glasses. I hope it's much better. Um, the last time I got glasses, um, they kept giving me migraines because my brain was like, we can't do this. I can't adjust to this. And I was like, we can do this. It's fine. And I mainly just used them for reading. They're reading glasses anyway. But when I got those, I realized how much I couldn't see. And then when I got the contacts, it was even more so. I can see things pretty close to me, arm's length away. I can see the keyboard, um, and the patterns on my blanket, pillow, my fan in the corner, and the fan looks perfectly fine to me. But if I'm trying to look for the buttons, I can't see them. TV is gigantic, so I can see it no matter what. I have a metal plate on the wall that I'm scared to take off because it's going to ruin it. Um, I made a huge mistake with that. Oops. Um, it's got this, what would you call that, a hexagon shape to it. Is it? No, I don't think it's a hexagon. It's got six sides to it. But to me, as I'm looking at it now, it just looks like a circle. But when I put it in my contacts, I can see it. And I'm like, whoa. Um, when I'm sitting outside, there's this stack of weeds that are growing in the middle of this walkway. And I know they're white flowers, but when I put in my contacts, I can see the details of the petals while still sitting in my chair. And they're a good maybe 10 feet away from me as well. And I was just like, really? I was this blind? I didn't think so. My mom's worse. Um, she was 5 point something. Um, I am 1.75. So it's not that bad. Um, we're not entirely sure if it was caused from my seizures or not, but he said my eyes were weird. And I was like, okay. I was like, I didn't know if I should take that as a compliment or not. It was the first time I've ever had anyone else touch my eye. I don't know why they insist on putting the contacts in for you. And then they watch you take them in and out. I did not like that at all. I was so nervous. Just, I don't like people watching me because the way I do it is not the way everyone does it. And the way I do it may freak other people out. So it was really weird having to deal with that. Uh, so yeah, I got contacts and I'm really happy for them. I love them. I do wish they were colored because I've always wanted to try out green eyes, but can't be picky. You need what you need. Um, I can't wait to get the glasses to see how they work. I hope they look decent because I've had librarian glasses before and ugh, they just, oh, they don't look right. Um, I like I liked the simple style of them, but the shape of the glasses themselves are these long rectangles. It's just ew. I was like, yeah, that does not work for me. But anyway, all I wanted to talk about was the world of Liddell, um, and the foster system with it. I'm really hoping that that there's more to the story, but there's only 8 episodes, which is really ticking me off at the moment. I mean, I have more recommendations on my phone that I take from TikTok and I copy the names of them and I put them in here. I send it to myself through Facebook because I have two separate accounts. And so through Messenger, I'll send it to my other account as a message and then it'll get sent to my phone either way. And so I basically am saving the names of them so that I can look them up later. I just thought this one was really cool. I'm not entirely sure what type of it doesn't seem to be a romance. I'm just going to say that now, but I'm not entirely sure of what the genre is. Um, Adventure fantasy. That's all it is. Okay. Um, but yeah, it's just it is really beautiful. I love the way they do this. Um, there's so much they could have done with this. Um, I tend to be a romance reader. When it comes to anime, I much prefer an actual plot. Um, yeah, when it comes to reading, it's always romance. I'm not entirely sure why that is because sometimes they're just so terrible that I can't stand them. When it comes to anime, on the other hand, I much prefer fantasy and isekais and stuff like that. Um, School Rumble was one of my favorites. Fruits Basket, Yu Yu Hakusho. Um, I have issues with Inuyasha and Bleach. Uh, One of these days, I'm gonna get a hold of some people and just start arguing with them over it because they done fucked up like so much. Um, I wrote my own fan fiction on Inuyasha to fix certain things with the story that just made no sense to me. And to be fair, I killed off both Kagome and Kikyo. There are no revives. Um, I gave Kagome a half sister um, who was born before her. Her mother ended up fell in love with a demon who had managed to come to the human world. And when the baby was born, she rejected it. Uh, couldn't wrap her head around it, so she just fully erased it from her memory. And after she got better, she ended up marrying Kagome's dad and Kagome and Soto's dad and has kids with them. And they never speak about the child who was dropped down the well and was taken in by her father for a couple of years before he passed. Um, but the only reason I did it this way was because there was no use for Kagome and there was no use for Kikyo. Um, to me, they brought Shishomaru in for no reason whatsoever. Um, he was basically They basically just turned him into a side character that was trying to amass more power, thinking that he was more deserving. You would think someone that respects their father so much, or did respect their father so much, wouldn't think that way. Would think that there was a fucking reason for this, for, for these things. I do not like the fact that they made Shishomaru marry Bryn and have kids together. I'm sorry, but you basically raised her from a tiny child. It's like having kids with your daughter. I did not like that at all. So the whole reason for the half sister was to give Shishomaru an excuse to keep popping up and coming around because he was curious about the human that smelled like a demon. And um, so Kagome is still in the story up until a certain point. At the temple where the Band of Seven, uh, where the temple gets set on fire, Kagome actually dies in the fire. That's the way I set it up. And because Kagome died, I made it so that her soul leaves Kikyo's body and her actual body to reincarnate, which in turn kills Kikyo. Um, I did not. I absolutely loathe Inuyasha. Okay, loathe them. Fucking loathe them. If I ever get reborn and I get born into that world, I'm gonna murder him. That is one of the first things I will fucking do. I don't care if I have to die afterwards. I'm killing him. Uh, Stupid fucking character. Uh, I had to give a reason for Shishomaru to keep coming around. So the way I set it up was that Shishomaru, once again, was trying to uh, take the Tenseiga from Inuyasha and ends up getting interrupted in the middle of their battle with this girl walking out onto the field and just slugging Inuyasha, and he goes flying, leaving the sword where it is. And she picks it up and it transforms and she points it at him and she says, "Give me one good reason not to kill you now." And like just completely pissed off because without anyone knowing, she would go back to the human world to check on her family. And her mom fills her in on the fact that Kagome has been going to that world, um, has been going to has been going through the well to go to where she exists. And so she, this time she goes back and she hears from her mom and Sota that Kagome had passed away and that Inuyasha had brought her body back to be buried properly. Um, and So she's pissed. Um, because if it wasn't for him leaving her to go and look for Kikyo or whatever, she wouldn't have died in the first place. So, of course, she's pissed. I did two versions of this, one where Kagome lives and one where she dies. I liked the one where she dies better because of her being able to hold the sword, um, and it being able to transform and everything, Shishomaru then becomes extremely interested in her because she smells like a full demon, yet she's got a complete human appearance. Although it's one of the skills of her demon race. Um, Now, for her type of race, there are three options when you have a child. Um, the males pick the gender. If a male of that species gets with a female of that species, the female then gets to decide how many, and if they're full demon, half demon, or just human. Uh, it is one of their it is one of the qualities of the women. So the father, when he got with her mother, decided that he wanted a female daughter. Um, Obviously, uh, because then he could just basically breed her, and no matter which other species that she was with, they would always turn out to be her species or human. Um, they their bloodline doesn't mix, which I thought was really cool. I I really liked the way they did it. I made them nine tails. Um, she was a rare snow nine tails, and her father was black nine tailed. Um, and she can choose the colors of her children, so they could be red, black, white, or what was the other one I did? I believe it was blue, black, white, red, blue, oh, or gray. Um, that is left entirely up to the female, no matter what. Usually, if the male of that species gets with a human, he'll ask them their favorite color, and if it's along the lines of one of those, he'll sleep with her to then get the child that he wants. Um, with humans, when a male species gets with a human, um, that specific species, when they're with a human, will always have a nine tails. Always. Um, but at that point, the male gets to decide whether it's male or female. Um, she, I name her Setsu, and she's happy that her father didn't last very long because she knew as soon as she was old enough, she would get bred like a freaking horse, and she was not happy with that at all. But so anyway, she gets into this fight with Shishomaru. I mean, Inuyasha. Sorry, and basically threatening to kill him with his own sword, which just has Shishomaru holding back his laughter. Um, and Inuyasha sitting there and apologizing over and over and over and over, and she is not taking it. She's getting more pissed with every apology. And finally, she just gets so pissed off that she hits him with the hilt of the sword and he passes out. And Sango, Moroku, and Kaede all rush to help him, basically to protect him so he doesn't get killed. And I guess Sango kind of sees the resemblance, and just kind of has this oh shit moment. And she whispers back to Moroku to take Inuyasha as far away from here as possible. And Kaede looks over and she's like, Setsu, what are you doing here? She did not know at all that she was Kagome's sister. So the way I set it up was she was basically their doctor slash priestess slash mercenary that would come and take care of the demons that would invade the village and stuff like that. And she had been doing that for so long without anyone ever knowing. Uh, Kagome had asked the question before they had left how Kaede kept getting all of these medicines and stuff like that. Um, and she just told her that they have a traveling woman who comes by every now and then and helps them gather materials and helps take care of the demons every now and then. And the other version is Kagome decides to live with Inuyasha and she's going to go through the well for the final time. So she's saying goodbye to her family. And then her mother tells her about her sister that is on the other side. And of course, Kagome starts wanting to go and search for her. So they pack up and do this whole thing and try looking for her. And she's avoiding them as much as possible because in this version, she had been abused and used by her dad and just kind of didn't trust anybody anymore, no matter if they were friends or family or anything of the sort. The only person that she opened up to was Kaede. Now, in both versions, it's the same. Ren gets kidnapped, obviously still a child, gets kidnapped, and Setsu happens to be passing by, gets rid of the demon, saves Ren, and just kind of like takes care of her for a short period of time until Shishomaru shows up and she returns her and they kind of go their own separate ways, like, eh, and just do what they normally do. Shishomaru's indifferent, Setsu's indifferent. And so they go about doing their own thing. And Setsu ends up coming back to the village and asks Kaede to take her to the forest because every full moon that breed goes through heat. So she asks Kaede to take her to the sacred tree and chain her up because the sacred tree masks their heat so that no guys get attached to her or anything like that. Well, they get attacked on their way out of the village, on their way to the sacred tree, and Shishomaru ends up showing up. Well, Ren ends up coming out of nowhere after the demon's defeated and asks her if she's okay. And she tells Ren that she needs to get away from her, that it was dangerous. And Shishomaru shows up and to go and find Ren and sees Setsu like holding on to herself, kind of rocking and shaking and taking these really quick deep breaths. And so he uses his tail to wrap her around the sacred tree and then sits on the other opposite end of the sacred tree with Ren. That way they could make sure she was okay. And all the while she's sitting there thinking, oh, this tail is so soft. And then she asked Shishamaru, like, she didn't even realize it was his tail. I don't know how many people have ever realized that the fluffy scarf around him was his tail. But I never believed it to be his tail. Uh, when I found that out, I was like, no way. There's no way that's true because that's a really long fucking tail. But I don't know if it's just him that did that with his tail or if his father did that too. I just thought that was really weird that he had a really long tail like that wrapped around his body. I always thought that was really weird. I don't know if he just had no control over it or not. But the way I do it is everyone just believes it to be a scarf and he's using some sort of spell to wrap it around people or use it to hurt them and stuff like that. Um, but she's like admiring this fluffy thing around her, and she goes, "Is this your tail? Did you wrap your tail around me?" And then Ren just starts laughing, and then after laughing for a while, she falls asleep. And he was like, "It was the only thing I had that wouldn't hurt you." And then after the full moon's over, they again go their separate ways, but Ren just keeps bringing them together, doing what Ren does best and wandering off when she's not supposed to. So, oh, I actually have three versions of the story because one of them, she comes back to the village and she still picks a fight with Inuyasha, and Kaede ends up calming her down, and Shishomaru shows up to drop Ren off for her human lessons to learn from Kaede. Um, and Shishomaru would go off and hunt for the village in return for the favor, or and do whatever errands he needed to do. So he shows up with Ren and uh, ends up seeing her there holding Inuyasha's sword and pointing it at him, and Kaede trying desperately to calm her down. And Rin ends up following her out of Kaede's hut and to this pond that is taken over the well of the sacred of that little sacred tree area. Um, where the well is, it basically overflowed with water after Kagome's death. It can still be used as normal, but now it's got this big lake around it. I thought it was so much prettier because it has like this really glowing effect and stuff like that. And uh, so Setsu ends up going there and sitting on a rock, leaning against a tree, looking over the lake, crying for the loss of her sister that she didn't get a chance to meet. And Rin follows her out there and tries to climb up the rock to get to her. And she brings out one of her tails to scoop Rin up. and sets Ren in her lap. And Ren asks her, "Did you know Kagome?" And kind of like touching on sensitive subject. And so they're both. Ren's crying out loud. She's a child; she can't really control it. Quieter than most kids, very true, but still cries. And Shishomaru ends up hearing her crying and goes to look for her. Uh, Rin falls asleep on her lap, and she's just sitting there with her tail wrapped around her, and ends up bringing out another one of her tails to cover her to make sure she stays nice and warm. And she's just sitting there relaxing with her until she hears Shishomaru's footsteps, and then her ears perk up, and she sits up and looks, and Shishomaru's just kind of standing there, doesn't really say anything, and she brings out a third tail to help her, well, two more tails to help her get off the rock without jostling Rin at all, and uses her tails to hand Rin to him, and then goes back to sitting on the rock, and he just walks away. But every time she came to the village, Rin happened to be there and would just cling to her for dear life. Like that was her lifeline. Um, anyway, that I don't know how I got onto that subject all of a sudden. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and go. So I hope you guys have a beautiful morning, evening, afternoon, whatever time of the day it is for you. And I will see you maybe tomorrow, maybe not. Um, I have been trying to keep up with the streams more, but I keep getting sidetracked with so many other things that I've got to do. So yeah, I may actually go back to Steam and play some more video games. I've been thinking about it for a while now. So okay, well, I'll see you guys then. Bye.